Good afternoon, gentlemen. Today I'll be talking about Me Too, and more importantly, the problems with it and why it's become such an issue. Now, many of you might not know, but Me Too, I think, officially started in 2006. But when it really got going was 2017. And ever since then, it's been ongoing, nonstop. And I bring this up because in very recent weeks, 4 separate men have been, albeit for different reasons and in terms of the degree or the severity of the accusations, varied, of course, but they've all been accused of something. And we can talk about the individual cases, but I think there's a bigger issue at stake here. The first person you might have heard is Justin Bieber. Bieber is, of course, a shitty pop star. I don't particularly like him as a person, but he has been Me Too'd with very little evidence. The claim has been made that several years back he sexually assaulted some female. No evidence has been produced for that. Then there's the case of Angry Joe, aka Average Joe, the gaming commentator on YouTube. In this case, it was claimed that he had behaved sexually inappropriately to someone, or more severely, that he had abused somebody. Then there's the not so odd and yet odd case of the porn star Ron Jeremy, sometimes referred to as the Hedgehog. Now, this is interesting because Ron Jeremy is close to 70, and he's been in the porn industry for 40 years or something, or maybe even longer than that, probably longer than that. And out of the blue, 3 women are claiming within a span of about 5 to 6 years recently that he had raped all of them. This strikes me as very odd because there's so much seedy stuff that goes on in the porn industry. And why out of the blue? And the disparate ages, too. One of the women is allegedly 46, and he's been taken into custody. Who knows? And the final case, the case that's most near and dear to my heart, is a gentleman by the name of Chris Avalon, who you might know, or if you don't know him, is a very productive, famous writer for the gaming industry. This is not an exhaustive list, but he's written for Knights of the Old Republic, Neverwinter Nights, Icewind Dale, Fallout New Vegas, etc., etc. It's a pretty long list. And to be fair, in his case, there is direct evidence that he tweeted some stuff that was a bit in poor taste, something to the effect of, if you come back to my place, I'm going to lick your pussy till something. But as a consequence of that, he has been canceled, and he has been fired or let go from the projects he was working on. And then the question arises as to whether or not a man should lose his livelihood because 6 years ago he made some lewd comments. So Me Too is obviously a problem, and it will be an ongoing problem. And what's interesting about all of this, and this is sort of the main point of the video, that in the case of Average Joe and Justin Bieber supposedly, but Average Joe very specifically, has produced an official statement to respond to the accusation. Now, he didn't produce it himself. It's written in immaculate prose. Clearly a lawyer produced it for him. But nonetheless, he hired legal aid. And he has the money to do so. And once he did that, once he had an official lawyer's publication regarding the issue, he offered essentially, indirectly, a cease and desist to the female accusing him. Justin Bieber, I've heard, is doing something similar. Chris Avalon has just basically kowtowed to them and admitted that he was supposedly wrong. And I don't know what's going on with Ron Jeremy, although he claims he's innocent. But what is the issue these days? The issue is clearly Me Too. Lots of women coming out of the closet making, oftentimes, more often than not, unfounded claims about men and what they've done. But the real issue is the internet and social media. And more importantly, the legal aspect of all of this, which is to say, in the case of Average Joe, and this is why it works, he hired a lawyer, and his lawyer wrote an official response for him, and he published it, and that got the female scared, because here's the thing. These claims made on Twitter or elsewhere online, technically speaking, fall under the category of defamation and or libelous defamation, so to speak. But our perception of that is different. If I were to go around, I'll just make a name up, and accuse Alucard von Stradovich of having robbed Smith's liquor store in Jones Street and stolen all the wine years later, and that damaged his reputation, despite that being a false claim with no evidence and I'm just spouting nonsense, that is defamation. That is punishable legally. And for some reason, we take exception to these accusations of Me Too, the finger pointing. Now here's why I would suggest a lot of these cases are just poppycock. Because as suggested by the Average Joe case, the female retreated. Because all it takes to make an accusation of this sort is the expenditure of a few calories by typing something out and sending it out to the world. There's no effort. It's rare to non-existent for these females to actually say, yes, let's take it to court. Let's have it out. Of course not. Because one, their claims and accusations are probably unfounded. And two, they really want to spend the money. They only wanted to spend a few calories typing out a message and sending it to the world. So the real issue at hand here is the issue that we have technically punishable crimes, legally speaking, defamation, libel, but they're not being followed up on in that respect because we've developed this strange vision of what's permissible and what's not. Again, if you were to say something about somebody, alleging some misdeeds he might have committed, but in fact never did, for which there's little evidence, and that leads to him losing his livelihood or being damaged financially, he can sue you, and rightly so. But when these women come out and accuse men of doing this stuff, it's the same category. The other issue with this is that it all comes down to being the court of public opinion. If there are too many voices accusing the person, such as in the case of Bill Cosby or Harvey Weinstein, then it doesn't matter how much money they have. And let's be honest, nobody really liked Weinstein. He was hideous and ugly, so he was going to go regardless. Cosby might have been a more complicated case. But by permitting this, we're creating separate legal categories for something that is one legal category, defamation, until proven otherwise. And it's hard to speculate as to what's going on in these women's heads. Sometimes it's ambition, sometimes it's regret, sometimes it's them just being overly emotional and insist on things that are probably not true. But people respond to incentives, women too. And they also respond to disincentives. If every time a woman leveled an accusation at a man, and specifically a popular man, she ran the risk of going to jail or being taken to court, do you think half the women would do that? I don't even think 90% of them would do it. And of course, the real kicker is always they rarely, if ever, go to the police. It's always just pressing some buttons and sending a message because it's a lot easier, it's low cost, and it's very effective for them. So what needs to be done here? Well, in my humble opinion, claims made about men's alleged sexual abuse and alleged sexual misbehavior need to be substantiated in the same sense that claims about anyone's activities need to be substantiated if you are maligning that person or engaging in libel upon pain of penalty of you going to jail. Because if you are ruining somebody's livelihood by destroying the reputation, that is very serious. But again, as always, we coddle the women. We allow them to do and say what they want, which is why they run to their keyboards and their iPhones, and they spend a couple of calories typing out a message and sending it to the world, messages that can irrevocably change a man's life. And this is more than theory, gentlemen. Let's say Average Joe actually took serious financial hits. He could sue this female. I doubt she'd have much to give. She has no money. But he could do that. So this is just an ongoing application of hypocrisy. And it needs to be called out for what it is. Is it possible some of these accusations that crop up every now and then are true? Yeah. In the case of Chris Avalon, from what I've seen, yes, they were crude, lewd messages. Yeah, baby, I'm going to lick your pussy. I would never write that or say that. I think it's idiotic. It sounds gay. But he did it. So, whatever. Should he lose all of his career opportunities? Because he's one of the best writers in game development to this day. Things have been completely taken out of proportion. The internet has given wings to those people who otherwise could not fly. And only the wealthiest of the wealthy, in some cases, can afford a proper legal defense in order to rebuke some of these claims. Now, I remember a time, maybe around 10 years ago, where I might say something to the effect of be careful around women. People wouldn't take it seriously. But look how much has changed since then. People have heard the Mike Pence rule or what have you. It is potentially very dangerous and very risky to associate with women, and all the more so if you are rich and or famous or popular. It is very, very risky. We need to stop with this false dichotomy between that's actual libel and this is just women tweeting things out. In any event, enjoy your weekend. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. And as always, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.